Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Syncing with ServiceNow. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. This is our introductory podcast where we talk about the podcast series and what we're going to do. I've got with me my weekly co-host, Eric Schwartz. Eric, how's it going?
It's going great, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Well, and thank you for joining. Let's kind of introduce our group here, our listeners, as to what we're doing. So you have been gracious enough to work with me to do a series of podcasts around ServiceNow, where we just simply go out and we review blogs off the ServiceNow blog site, and we find things that we find interesting that we think people might be interested in consuming, and we give them a different way to consume it while you and I talk through it and add context. Context. Let's start by talking a little bit about you. What's your background, Eric?
Yeah, thanks. So I've been with ServiceNow for approaching 3.5 years. And I am currently an advisory solution consultant. I support our alliances and channels organization. I'm based in New Jersey. And previous to ServiceNow, I have a longstanding history in the data center and supporting different technologies within the data center. And a big portion of that time was spent with data storage technologies, but it kind of runs the gamut: servers, networking, storage, virtualization, etc.
Okay, so first question: Southern New Jersey or Northern New Jersey?
So I'm going to give you option C, which is Central New Jersey, and depending upon who you ask, Central New Jersey sometimes exists and sometimes doesn't, but I say it does. So I'm on the west side of New Jersey, very close to Pennsylvania. I'm south of 195, which means I get Philadelphia news stations. So I should be rooting for the Eagles and the Phillies. But I grew up in the northern part of Central Jersey. So I'm a Giants fan. And, I tend to hail towards the New York side of the sports teams.
Okay. And that makes sense. And especially in that region, right? You got to pick one or the other. Now let me ask you this: do you have to hate the other one, or are you tolerant of the other one?
I guess that really depends upon who you ask.
Okay.
I also spent a substantial part of my life in the Boston area, where I went to college there at Northeastern. So when you talk about sports fans and hating other sports fans, I spent a lot of time in Red Sox territory. So, I'm an impartial person. I'm in it for the love of the game. Anything beyond that, you have to ask somebody else who puts the war paint on and goes to the stadium.
Yeah. So that was good. You gave the proper political answer and probably genuine based on the fact that I could see your face and how you answered it. That's, it's just a game, right? It's just a game. I will tell you a quick funny story. I was on a call with one of my sales guys. He's based in Boston. We were on the call with some folks from New York. This was just after I think the Patriots had won yet another Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And he starts the call by saying, "Hey, how's it going? Good. How's it going? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm a Patriots fan. We just keep crushing it." I was like, okay, if we're talking to a customer in Boston, that's fine. But let's don't make that the first thing we say to a New York-based customer. We don't know how they feel about it.
This is true. And, you never know.
So religion, politics, and sports are things you got to be careful about bringing up, at least if you're going to bring it up in such a way that you're clearly on one side or the other.
This is very true. Especially if you want to sell something. You want to appeal to the people, not upset them.
Right. Well, Eric, I caught something in your intro of yourself that I find interesting. How did you go from what sounds like an infrastructure guy to a software as a service, extremely capable and vast platform like ServiceNow?
So great question. And I guess like a micro history is my life has been born and bred in technology. I take a lot of influence from my father, who had a X-ray technology company way back in the 80s, and then became an IT consultant, and it heavily influenced me like as a child. So I had very early contact with technology. That, you know, I was working with technology that was only available to people in a corporate environment as a kid. And so that imprinted very heavily on me. So really any technology, whether it's a hobby or in my career, is something that gets me excited and keeps me interested. But, you know, investing heavily in infrastructure and data storage, it propelled me, gave me great experiences, and it was a great place to be in, you know, in my career. But as soon as the internet started to develop and the technology from a hardware perspective started to become a commodity, and there was a shift that I could see in that, you know, the cloud providers had a goal to turn infrastructure into a utility. And I wanted to, I saw that like writing on the wall, and not that, you know, infrastructure is going away by any means. It's shifting, it's changing. And I saw a lot of excitement in the cloud, in the platforms as a service in the cloud. And ServiceNow was something that was on my radar. And, you know, connecting the dots between actually some people that I had became very close with in my infrastructure days who had made the move. It was something that kind of all things lined up. And I was like, you know what, this ServiceNow has expanded their portfolio so much beyond just IT service management solution, that they're really going after being like an operating system for your business. And that really intrigued me. So it kind of was like the perfect storm at that time.
You know, I had the same conversation with somebody, I think yesterday, and we talked about the limitations of on-premises data centers, which clearly have some type of limitation, whether it's size or cooling or power or CapEx cost. But when you talk about true cloud services, whether it's IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, and I would maybe argue that ServiceNow maybe covers a bunch of those, if not all those services, but certainly SaaS and maybe platform as a service, PaaS. Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say that in your mind, when you're as a service, that the opportunity to continue to expand and evolve and add value is almost limitless?
It definitely, I definitely agree with that. And that's part of the interest in as a service platform, infrastructure, whatever it may be, is that it can be transformed into pretty much anything that you want, in without the need to get the nuts and bolts and start putting stuff together. And it has a elasticity, I guess, or a dynamic component to it that does not exist in building and running your own infrastructure. You know, there's still going to be a place for that. And, you know, if any of my friends that are still in infrastructure happen to be listening to this, I would hate to have them think that I'm telling them that their future is forsaken or whatever, which I'm not doing. But I agree, like, you know, the dynamicness of the cloud and of as a service, there's a lot of potential there, right? It's whatever you want it to be. It's not just what it was when you bought it.
Right. And what about speed to evolution, and what something as a service brings to that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, that too, right? So being able to have access to develop something to scale basically instantaneously without much thought, and scale up and scale down. I mean, that the ability for a business to be able to do that, it breaks a lot of barriers down, especially if whether you're small or large, right? If you have an idea and you want to try something, the ability to jump in and build out what you need without having to physically put it together, it's tremendous, right? There's unlimited opportunity to do that. And the speed at which to be able to do that would be critical for bringing anything to market or supporting any kind of demand.
So Eric, this might be the hardest question I ever ask you on this podcast series, but as succinctly as possible, what does ServiceNow do?
What does ServiceNow do? Yeah, well, that's a great question. And we make workflow. That is the basic fundamental principle of ServiceNow. And Anybody will tell you that, including our CEO. If you want, I can elaborate a little bit more on that, though, since that's just like a nugget.
Well, let me pause on that real quick. And this is something a lot of people don't get in technology. The whole point of the IT department is to make work better, to make workflow better, to make employees' lives better. And I know sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, but that is the goal. And I'll tell you, for me personally, I was in a meeting one time and I was listening to my team talk, and it was clear to me that my boss and my peers didn't get that the job was to make our employees' lives better, to make our company more successful and more productive. It was all about them and whatever application they were responsible for. And I think part of the genesis of the ServiceNow story is the recognition that helping business be better, doing it software as a service, using a platform and an architecture that was kind of standardized within ServiceNow, but extensible. That's a big part of the ServiceNow story, right?
Yeah. So there's the way that I would explain ServiceNow to my grandmother, and there's a way that I would explain ServiceNow to someone who is inside a company, right? And the way I would talk to my grandmother is that we take work, we create a platform that allows people to create or to reduce friction when it comes to doing work, right? Like if you need to do work and you need to collaborate with people and get work done, we make those experiences, we power the experiences that power that work in a way that makes it like you're calling a car from your phone to pick you up, or ordering something, where it's so simple and so easy to use that there's almost no friction in doing it, right? That's the outside view of it. But if I was going to be talking to somebody who is working at an organization and they're wondering what ServiceNow does, while it's a similar approach, I would say, like, when you're working and you need to request something of somebody, or you want to keep track of something, how are you doing that today? And, is it Excel? Is it spreadsheets and documents and emails? It's a long established but complex system. And what we can do is simplify that by making you being able to work and make requests of nearly anything from anywhere and anybody across your entire company, right? And we have a lot of different technologies that empower those experiences.
And that's extremely important, because if you stop at the end of someone's life and look at what they spent time doing, work is going to be a big chunk of that pie, and maybe the biggest chunk. Other than sleeping, work may be the most they did of anything.
I'm sure there is some statistic that says that specifically. Yes, absolutely.
And my wife would argue that it'd be like half my pie, because I just happen to love working, so it's kind of okay.
Well, there's a saying, if you love what you do, you don't ever work a day in your life, or something like that. So I think that's debatable too, or yeah. I would agree with it. You can make that debate.
There's certainly some truth to that. And it sounds like ServiceNow gets that, and gets that it hasn't been as good as it could have been, and creating a platform that allows you to continue to evolve it is kind of the mindset, while thinking about the human element and where the human element applies to getting work done.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, the key term, just like the cloud as being this spiffy term that everybody uses, is also digital transformation, right? And that pertains a lot to what ServiceNow does. But there's been a great appreciation for real digital transformation in the last 12 months, when work went from not being able to go look over the cubicle wall and talk to somebody, and not being able to, take that printout and give it to someone, right? The ability to collaborate and work with people from all over the place, even if you were just one office of a small group of people, now you're distributed because everybody's working from home, right? And so ServiceNow has had a great deal of success in helping our customers throughout the last 12 months, being able to digitally transform their organization and the work that they're doing, and take away the friction that existed in a time that we kind of took for granted, right? And I think, and it's not just my words, but the words of, other big time people here at ServiceNow, that the digital transformation is here to stay, and it's more important now than ever before. And it's not just about doing work. It's, how efficient are you doing it? How much effort does it take you to work with that person, collaborate with somebody, or make a request of something, or get help, or look up information? I mean, the list goes on for depending upon what it is you want to do, but there's a lot of opportunity there for ServiceNow to help business and people. And that's ultimately what it's about.
And what industries are we talking about?
To be honest, it's almost all of them. I mean, whether it's medical, hospitals, state and local government, large enterprises, telecommunication companies, it spans the gamut. Federal organizations. I don't think that there is an industry that there isn't some relevance to ServiceNow and what we're doing.
It's any industry, any business that wants to improve their business, right? And use technology to do so. You're never going to be done, right? There's always going to be areas of efficiency and improvement, whether it's interacting internally, whether it's process management, whether it's customers, submitting information that you need to take and digest and take the data out of that and improve your business that way. It really is an exciting opportunity in the ServiceNow world, because you go to bed tonight, you might have it covered, but when you wake up in the morning, you got a new idea, and guess what? You can go get it.
Yeah. And one of the things that excited me about ServiceNow, like I mentioned earlier, is our ever expanding portfolio, right? And so, ServiceNow has made a bunch of acquisitions over the last few years. We're constantly adding to our portfolio and our capability. And of course, ServiceNow is also a development platform. And, there's a lot of low code, no code tools and capabilities out there. So even if something doesn't exist today, a customer can put it together. And even when it came to what was happening again with like the pandemic and what we were doing, we actually created a community forum that allowed people to submit ideas, because we were literally on the bleeding edge of what was going on. And some of the products that we had released early on in the pandemic were built by customers, because something never existed before to coordinate an emergency response in a way that they needed to, right? And it just shows that, sky's the limit, and that there's really, there are ideas out there that haven't been thought of or built that will be, and, who knows what's going to look like.
And there'll be thousands of additional new ideas later today.
Yep.
Never stops. Hey, Eric, I got to run. I've got another podcast to go record and meet with someone, but this has been great. I'm looking forward to doing the series. You're obviously the right person to do it with. Your head's in the right place. Your heart's in the right place. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it as well. And I appreciate the time.
We'll do it again in a week. Thank you.
Thanks. Talk to you later.